Okay, last class I showed you how to override the init method and how to use the config object, correct? So init method is used for initializing your servlet, and the config object is used for storing the values. If at all you want to store the values in the config object, you have to configure in the web.xml. What values you configure in the web.xml will be stored into the config object when the config object gets created, and will be supplied implicitly as an argument to your init method, and in the init method you can get the values now by calling what? Config.get init parameter. If you do this much, definitely you'll get the values whatever configured in the web.xml. Done? Okay. So some of the mistakes, okay, what you would have got is, I'll show you now. Okay, you might have got null values, and because of that you'll not get the DB connection. What is the reason? I'll show you. This is one of the debugging class. Okay, so the reason would be simple. In the web.xml you would have given one key now, like supposing I have given DB URL. Okay, and you'll be telling what? Config.get init parameter of DB URL. One spelling mistake or case sensitivity, any mistake like that, gone. So it's always advisable to copy paste what? The values from web.xml in which one? Config.get init parameter. Always copy paste. More recommended. See, these values I mean to say. Here you are telling now in the web.xml what you will be telling? Driver, DB URL, DB UID. Okay, so these are the keys, or these are they are the keys, or you can say they are some kind of variables. Okay, which will be holding the value, and it is that only you have to call here: driver, DB URL, DB UID, DB PWD. So it's always advisable to what? Copy this and paste it here. Always advisable, more recommended. Done? And don't try to code, because one spelling mistake, one case sensitivity problem also, you will not get the value. So that's how you configure it, and you will access those values in which one? Your Java class. So in the idea of all this is, we do not want to hard code which one? The configuration values in our Java class. So a beautiful support you have got. Okay, some more things. Okay, we'll see. Okay, now so let this remain. Yeah. See, according to the Servlet API, I'll open and show you. Just a second. Okay. You know there are two init methods: class customer servlet extends which one? HTTP servlet. This is true. Whenever you write a servlet, this will be there. So till now you have seen how to override the init method. Public void init servlet config, and here you will be directly saying config dot, which is a method you will be calling get init parameter of driver. Means this is the name what you used in web.xml. String, the return type of that would be string. So like this you can get all the configured values. This is one way. This is what I showed in the last class. Now let's look into the other init method. Public class customer servlet extends HTTP servlet. There is one more init method. See, this init method is there in the servlet interface. This init method, the signature of this method is present where? In the, you know the servlet now? Servlet is the interface our classes are implementing, correct? HTTP servlet is implementing generic, HTTP servlet is extending generic servlet is implementing servlet. So this is method coming from there. There's one more init, public void init without the ServletConfig. Okay, this method is present where now? This method is present where? Generic servlet, yes or no? This method is present. This is an extra method, it's overloading now. This is the method present in generic servlet. So what if I override this method? How will you get the reference to ServletConfig? Yes or no? You can override any of the configs init method. Both are lifecycle methods only. You can override that one or you can override this one. Okay, so what is the difference between these two init method is, here you get the reference to the config object implicitly. If you override this init method, you have to get the reference to the config object explicitly. Object is created, we can't create the object, only you can get the reference. Now how do you get the reference to the config object? See this carefully. Servlet config is equal to get servlet config. This is a method you're calling. Once you call this method, the return type of that would be ServletConfig. Rest all remain same. What? String str driver is equal to config dot get init parameter. Rest all remain same. There is no difference. Only the question is about the access you get to the config object. So you can get the reference to the config object in two ways. One is implicit, one is explicit. So if you override this init method, reference to the config object is supplied to you implicitly. If you override this init method, you have to get the reference explicitly. Clear? So that's all the difference. Only how do you get a reference? See, only you can work with an object, only have the reference to it. Without the reference, how will you work with any object? Correct. If you want to call any method in any object, you should have the reference. So you have to call it. Now one more question. So this is a method, which one get select config is a method, right? So where is this method present now? That's the next question. You're calling the method blindly. You're not using any dot operator and all that. Yes or no? So where is this method coming from now? This is pure core Java, man. It will be coming from the superclass. Good. Yes. You can call the methods of your superclass directly in subclass now. See, request dot get parameter means req dot, the get parameter is a method in HTTP servlet request. So dot indicates the method is belonging to that object. If you're not using any dot and all that, obviously that method will be out either in the same class or it will be coming from superclass. Now that is Java coding. So that comes from superclass. Very simple. So you can call this. So this is a method which is present in HTTP servlet. So you call this, automatically you get the reference to that. Done? So this example I will not be giving, you try it out, just change it. Rest all will remain same, but extensively use this only. So you code like this only. Practically, real life, we code like this. But you should know the difference between the two init method. Only difference is what? Getting reference to your config object. One is implicitly you'll get here, there you'll get what? Explicit. Here you get implicit reference to ServletConfig object. Here you'll get what? You have to get the reference to ServletConfig object. What? Explicitly. That's all the difference. It's all the same. Done? Try it. I'll leave the assignment to you itself. Clear? And if you want from the docs, you'll say this HTTP servlet. Don't learn without what? Docs. You'll never understand. Because see, here nothing is in our hand. Everything pre-decided by Sun. We are only learning their specification to use. So HTTP servlet I opened, which is the method. So many methods are there. We are seeing the method. Okay, if it is not there in HTTP servlet, it would be in get ServletConfig method. Its method from where? Sorry, it's not there in HTTP servlet. Get ServletConfig. It is there in generic servlet. It is a method present in generic servlet. See this? The generic return type of get ServletConfig is what? ServletConfig. So this method what you are calling now is coming from where now? Generic servlet, superclass. That's why I am not using any dot. Directly you can call it. Done? So this is one thing. Then next, we want to see the two init method now. Yes, see this. This is an extra init method which is present where now? We are seeing a completely generic servlet now. This is class generic servlet. Yes, one init method you can see here. Which init method? this init method. Understood? So without what? ServletConfig as parameter. So here you have to get the reference explicitly. And the other method, see, this is coming from where? Super interface. Which one? Servlet. Okay. And one more is the method which we saw now. Which one? Get. Yeah, ServletConfig. So these are all methods coming from generic servlet like this. Okay. This one, if you want to say init, I'll click. It is actually present in. Okay, sorry. It is actually present in Servlet. Like this, browse. You'll only get the idea. Done? Everything you'll start understanding very clearly. So that's the difference between these two. Which one? Methods. Shall I clear everything now? So that is getting reference implicitly. This is getting reference explicitly. Okay, before I proceed, some more small things I'll talk about this one now. One thing is how you are creating your Java, which one, web projects. I'll talk about that. And one more is do not keep so many projects in which one, Tomcat. As you proceed ahead, start deleting your web projects also, because too many projects also what will happen, server will take too much time to start. So I'll show you how to delete the projects in the server. That one I'll show you. And one more, you make one small mistake in creating a new web project. That also I'll show you. Okay, so these two things I'll cover, and then I'll complete with the go to the next topic. Yeah, you are quite comfortable right now with this window of which one? Eclipse. So you have the console, you have the server. Okay, in the server, if you're going to see these many applications have been deployed here. Never keep so many applications. Clear? Because you will be going on coding many projects. Whichever you feel which is unwanted, go on deleting it. Clear? And when you delete it, see to that your server is stopped. Okay, so I'll delete. See, just I showed you how to delete some applications. This is one thing. Are you clear? Almost all you should keep your server clean. Just keep only the projects which are working with. Rest all you delete it. Fine. Just right click and say what? Remove. Nothing more. So that is one thing. Next, one more mistake what you would do while creating a new project, I'll show you. Just see this. Right click, new you'll say. Yes. Project. Then what you would say? Dynamic web project. Next. See here, I'll say give the name as delete app, because anyway I'm going to delete it. Delete app. See here, target runtime, sometimes it would be Apache. Once, see, this option will be coming once you start integrating with what you know. Once you integrate Eclipse with server, you start getting that option. This will be enabled. The day you configure which one? IDE. Eclipse with the server, you integrate, you start getting that. So it should not be there. This it should be actually what? None. See to that, even if it is selected, change it to what? None. See, by default this would have been present. I'll just show you what will happen now. Okay, then what you'll do, you'll click next, then you'll click next, then you'll say generate and say finish. So once you say, that project will get created now. So then this is the application. See, when I do that, what is going to happen is, can you see this option? Apache, Tomcat. It should not come actually. You can see all the jars in the server are coming. You actually need one jar. But since you are integrated now, what will Eclipse do? When creating the new web project, it will include all the jars like this and bring it in, put it into what? Your project. It is not recommended. Done? So that is why this is delete app. Okay, I'll create one more project now. See this, what I'll do now. So new project, dynamic, same thing, everything same. This one I name it as delete del app 2. Some name I am giving, delete app 2. So always this should be what now? None. Be clear with this, it should be none. And now see what will happen. Rest all is same, only just you select what? None. See to that always target runtime is what? None, that's all. That one thing you take here. Click next, everything is same, there is no change. Finish. Say no and see this. This is the second application now. See now, see the difference, you will only come to know. Apache Tomcat is not there now. Yes or no? So see to that this particular thing is avoided. Which one? Always see to that target runtime is none. Otherwise simply all the jars of the server will be added to your project when you are creating the new project. Done? And if at all it is there, if you want to delete it now, right click on the project. Yeah, it is recommended to delete it. Properties, go to Java build path. In Java build path, select what? Libraries, select this and say remove. Say okay, it will be gone. If at all by mistake you have done it and you are seeing all that which one? Apache, that extra fault is there, you delete it. It's more recommended that you don't add the tightly couple like that. Done? Fine. So these are the two things. So one, you should know how to delete your projects from the server, and two, I showed you how to create the new projects. Okay. So you should be very strong in using Eclipse now. Coding is hardly a simple thing here. You should be very good in using Eclipse. Fine, done with all this now. So we'll move to the next topic. Okay, the next topic would be ServletContext. One more interface we are going to see now. This is the next interface what you are going to see. Which one? ServletContext. See, we are all studying the interfaces in Servlet API. I covered Servlet, right? After Servlet, which one I covered? HTTP Servlet. Then which one we covered? ServletConfig. Then we are seeing now ServletContext. So these are all the classes and interfaces present in this API. Which one? Servlet API. We saw HTTP Servlet request. So how good you know your API, that better you can code here. It is nothing but we are exploring what? The library of Servlet API. Done? So most of them we have covered. Now we'll be saying this. Okay. So see, few more remain now. If you complete this, almost all Servlet will get. It should be perfect. Okay. So we are exploring the library now. Whatever I am teaching is what? Library. So we'll be going with ServletContext. Now see, this ServletContext is also used for storing configuration values only. Same like what? Same like config object. But there's some difference. We'll see the difference. But the idea of using context object is what? To store configuration values only. Understood? So if you want, you can store your configuration values in config object, or if you want, you can store your configuration values in context object. Okay. So first I show you the output of what? Context object. Okay, once I show you the context, then we'll discuss the difference. Okay, but keep in mind, I'll tell you the difference right now, but this difference I'll be showing you the example only. Okay, the difference would be this. The value stored in one config object is available to a single servlet, getting it? And the value stored in a context object is available to all the servlet. So it's your wish. If you want the configuration values for multiple servlets, keep those values in what? Context object. If you want the values to be available to a single servlet, keep it in config object. This config object is kind of security thing. Whatever values you store it in config object, whatever values are stored in config object, you can access it only in one config object. Okay, so I'll just show you the output first, then I'll make you clearly understand with good examples all these things. Here you're going to use one more tag now, called as what you know. If at all you want to store the values in context object, what will you do? You're going to use one more tag. Where? End of the day I want to store configuration values. Where? In web.xml. So I store it. How? In the web.xml I use a tag called as context param. Param name, param value. And this tag will be used outside all the servlet tags. It will be context param is a child tag of web app. Is directly a child tag of what? Web app. And you should not use it with under servlet. Why? You'll understand. Because the value stored in context object is available to what? All the servlets. The value stored in config object is available to a single servlet. Done? So first I'll show you an example. So I'll be using that previous example only as a base. Okay, so those two examples will continue now for many things. Okay, so those two examples only I'll use, and I'll show you how the context object works. Then we'll see more things. See this, the example which I'll be moving now is the 12th one servlet context app. First I'll show it in a simple servlet, single servlet, then I'll show how to use context with multiple servlets. So step by step we'll go. First we'll learn how to use it. So it's a very simple thing. If at all you want to store the values in context object, all you'll be doing is a tag you'll use now called as context param, param name, param value, same story, no change. So if you configure your values like this, these values will be stored into what? Context object. Understood? That's it. See now, servlet is neat. Nothing is there now. Nothing is here. Getting it? I don't want to store it in which one now? Config. So I stored all the values in context. Fine. You can store it. So in single servlet, you will not understand the difference. The difference you will understand between what? Config and context when I use multiple servlets. So first understand to use it. So now, how do you get the reference to context object? If you want the values from it, you have to get the reference. Very simple. See, if I override this method, obviously you'll be overriding which method? init with ServletConfig. Just call config.get ServletContext. This is a method. What? This one. Rest all story is same now. What? Context.get init parameter. You are getting these values from where now? Context object. Finished. The tag what I am using is context param. Param name, param value. Now, but you have to get the reference to context object explicitly. How do you get the reference to context object explicitly? By calling the method config.get ServletContext. You call it, you'll get the reference, and you can access all the values. Done? So this is how it works. Just I'll show you this. You're getting this now. See the output. Only change is what? Instead of storing it in config object, I've stored it in context object. That's all the difference. And for doing that, what is the web.xml here? Done? Earlier. Okay, first I'll show you the output. Then we'll discuss more things. So enter your name. Let me open the Apex for you. Means I'll show you the database. See, these objects are very vital. Which one? Config, context. Your full life stands on these objects. Understand these objects well. Yeah, we are having some value A, B, C, Q, W, something like this. I'll add some value like Ramesh. Just see this. Ramesh is the value I'm adding. And I'll add something like password as Ram. Email ram@gmail.com. Phone number 111. And I'll say click here. Yes, you can go and check now. The values will be inserted here. All is working perfect. And if you want, you can notice in your console, the init got executed. You got your values which are stored in the what? The context object. Everything works the same way. Only difference is I stored it in context object. Understood? Sorry, clear this output wise? Yes. Earlier, if you want, see, this is how you are storing in context object. The previous, see, this is 10th, 12th example. Just I'll open up the 10th example. Notice, in config, what you do? You'll say, I need param, param name, param value. See the difference. And those you are putting it inside which one? Servlet type. Inside servlet type. But this one has been put into what? Web app type. That is the difference. I need param will use for config, and for context will use context param. Other tags remain same, param name, param value. That's the difference. Fine. Are you clear? So if you configure like this, values will be stored into context object. Now I'll show you one more example. See this also. It's very simple now. See, if you remember the previous 11th example, or okay, once again, see this. Now the same example will come back now. How to use this? Which one? Customer servlet, login servlet, existing user servlet. There are 4 servlets now. When you are having 4 servlets, 2 servlets need DB connection now. Which one? Customer servlet needs the database connection, as well as login servlet needs the database connection. Now when I had shown you in the previous class how to use the config object in an application, you had configured config object for 2 servlets. But now see what will I do? I will configure like this. That's it. And look at all your servlets. They are normal. No, I need param anywhere. So value stored in context object is available to what? All the servlets. Okay, it is available. So just see this. How do you get the reference? Config.get servlet. Same story. Now you can get it in login servlet also. The same values you can get what? In customer servlet also. Both. You can get this in customer servlet also, or you can get it in login servlet also. So this is much better. If at all you want the configuration, same configuration values in multiple servlet, it's better you put it in context object. Still clearly I'll make you explain this. I now have to explain more about context. See, remember this is a very important interview question. The rule is one servlet config will be available to what? One servlet instance. This is the rule. And one servlet context object is available to all servlet instances. This is the difference. A very important equation. I mean to say, supposingly, see this, we are having some servlets now. Which are the different servlets? See, one would be new, I'm writing it in shortcut, new user servlet is one servlet, and the other one would be what? New user servlet. The other one would be customer servlet. Okay, and we are having 2 more servlets. We should rectify. Which is that existing user servlet. We have got 4 servlets, and one more would be login servlet. So I got the clear picture. In the last class, in the previous example, what I had done was I had got 2 config objects for what? This is one servlet config object. This is one servlet config object. Means if you want, you can configure for these 2 also, but we didn't need what? DB connection. That's why we didn't configure. And all your values, driver, DB URL, DB UID, DB PWD were stored here, values. Yes or no? You know the values. Same way here also in this config, what was there? Driver, DB URL, DB UID, DB password. You know the values, correct? Huh? That lengthy values. Driver is what? You know the value now. What is the value? JDBC colon Oracle colon. Sorry, JDBC dot. Sorry. Driver is Oracle dot JDBC dot driver dot Oracle driver. This is the value. Similarly, you have values for other four. So this is what happens if you store the value in Oracle dot JDBC dot driver dot Oracle driver. So this is what happens if you store the values in config object. But the same values are needed for many servlets. Here I am having only 2. But supposing the same values are needed for many servlets, what will I do now? Better you store the values in what? This is the context, ServletContext. So you can store it now. Driver, DB URL, DB UID, DB PWD. It's your wish. The same values, there is no difference. Oracle dot JDBC dot driver dot Oracle driver. You can store it. But the difference is what you know. If you store it, the value stored in config is available to what? A single servlet, but the value stored in context is available to what? All the servlets. So wherever you want, you can get it. It's all about what? The visibility. The visibility. Okay. If you store in context, it's available to all the. If you store it in context, it's available to all the servlets. Still more clear. One good example I'll give. Assume that you are all servlets. You are all servlets. You means you are all servlets. Now what happens? What I write on the board. What I write on the board is visible for you now. All of you know. So what is the board now? Context. What I write on board is visible to all of you. But what you write in your book, only you can see. What you are writing, only you can see. What he is writing, you can means the other person can. One person cannot see what other person notes now. So you are sitting here front. Okay. One more person is sitting in the back. You are writing your own notes. The person sitting at the back is writing his own notes. Now how will they share the information? They cannot. The visibility is restricted. So your notebook is what? Config. Your notebook, what you are writing is ServletConfig, and the board, what you are saying is the context. It's only about the visibility. You store wherever you want. Okay. So both have their own advantages and disadvantages. Means you might think ServletContext is good. It is available to all the servlets. Sometimes there might be a kind of security. That value is restricted for only a single servlet. That time you can go for config. These are the support. This is the support what you are getting. Now when you are developing application, which support you want, you choose. It's not that you have to use always config object only, you have to use always context object only. Okay, this is the support what has been provided to the developers by the some people, okay, to store what? Configuration values. Depending on your requirement, you store your configuration value either in the config object or in context object. Are you clear with this? So one config, one servlet, one context, all servlets. Still more clear? One notebook, one student, one board, all students. More clear? That's it? Clear? Remember that. So this is the visibility. Okay. Now all this you understood. When should the context object be created? Now the life and depth of context object. When should it actually be created? Yes or no? So the context object should be created before any servlet instance gets created, no? Because we don't know in which servlet you'll access the value, you don't know. You can access it in this one or this one or this one or this one. So when should that context object be created now? When the server starts. So that is why when the server starts itself, what happens? The context object will be created. And now that value can be accessed in any servlet. Now when should it be destroyed? When the server shuts down only. So clearly understand the differences. You should know each and every object. When does the request response object get created? So I'll repeat it, clearly understand. The request response objects get created when the request comes, and they are destroyed when the response is given. Clear? The request response objects get created when the request comes, and gets destroyed when the response is given. Done. Servlet instance gets created under two conditions. One, when the first request comes, or when the server starts up. Okay. Server startup instance gets created only when you have used load on startup. But servlet instance gets created under two conditions. Now when does the servlet instance get destroyed? Server shutdown. Okay, then the next object which I have covered, which one? Config object. Config object gets created only after the servlet instance gets created, and it is destroyed only after your servlet instance is destroyed. Which one? Config object. The context object is created when the server starts, and context object is destroyed when the server is shutting down. Very simple. So all the points what you have written now, clearly it will get over. So that's the visibility. Are you clear with all this now? Okay, this also has been predicted in the, it's very clearly shown in what? The diagram for you. Okay, so shall I clear this? So you are having options, use it. Yeah? See now, day by day, you'll start understanding this diagram in a more better way. Okay, and you'll get full control over coding. Simple it is. You got the servlet context. The value stored in this servlet, which one? Context is visible to what? All the servlets. I have written 2 servlets here. Okay, but every servlet will have what? Its own config object. So this is the diagram actually. Very clearly you start understanding all this. Still more things to be cleared. Okay. And you'll start following everything now. You get the perfect grip on coding. Okay. So these objects are very crucial now. The life of the request response object, the life of your servlet, done. Config object, context object. One more object will come over, session object. We'll be saying it. These are the most important objects in Servlet API. If you know how to work with these objects, your programming is going to be done very easily. That's all in Servlet, there's nothing more. And if you're good in Servlet, which one becomes easy now? JSP becomes dead easy. Because the same objects will be coming in what? JSP. Done? Okay, 1 second. And see, you know the objects getting created. Next, we'll talk about the references. How do you get the reference to request and response? They are supplied implicitly to you. You don't create it, but you'll get the reference to request and response objects implicitly. How do you get the reference to config object? 2 ways. One you can get implicitly, other one you can get explicitly. When will you get the reference to config object implicitly? If you override init with ServletConfig. Now when do you have to get the reference to config object explicitly? If you override init without ServletConfig parameter. Now how do you get the reference to context object? You have to get it explicitly only by calling which one now? Config dot get ServletContext. If you call this only, the return type would be what? ServletContext, then only you can work. So objects are created and destroyed by the container. Container knows when to create the objects and when to destroy the objects. You can only work with these objects. Done with this? You can only work with these objects, and to work with the object you need the references. So they will be supplied to you implicitly like this. Done? Yeah. So you got the difference. The most important interview question, which one? ServletConfig and ServletContext. So that's the heading, put it. So these 2 objects are used for what now? Why do you use ServletConfig and ServletContext? For storing the configuration values required by a servlet. Understood? You'll be storing the values there. 1 second, let the projector switch on, we'll go through that itself. So keep coding, more clearly you start understanding all the things. Done? You see the points now? ServletConfig and ServletContext. See, these 2 objects are used for storing any initialization values or configuration values needed for a servlet. The next point, if you store any configuration or initialization values in ServletConfig, it is available to only that particular servlet instance. You cannot get it in what? Another servlet instance. Okay. If you store any configuration values or initialization values in ServletContext, then it is available to all the servlet instances. Done? Note, one ServletConfig, one servlet instance, one ServletContext, all servlet instances. If you want to make this point clear, which one? If you store any configuration or initialization values in config, it is available to only one particular servlet instance. I can give a simple example I'll give you. Just see how you do R&D. Learn to do R&D now. Yes, we'll take the example which we had seen, this customer ServletConfig app. Yes or no? So here you got 4 servlets. Yes or no? Customer servlet and login servlet both need what? The values. Yes, they need it. So what I'll do, for in the web.xml, I'll remove it for one servlet. Which one? Same, remove it for which one? For which one I removed? Login servlet. Now you will not find these values in what? The config object of login servlet. If it is not there, now in login servlet, how are you trying to get it? You will not get it. Okay, you try doing it. You will get what values you know? Null, 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 null you will get. And code will not run. If you want to show the output, like this you have to do R&D and learn concepts. Don't see output. Output everybody will get one day. So whatever doubts you get, like this you have to do R&D. Understood? So now we are talking about which one? Login servlet, no? Login servlet means which one? Existing user. Click. Please enter your details. I'll enter some value. Click here. Which one? Through exception. So we'll go and check in the console now what has happened. Inside init, null pointer exception. It is unable to load it. Means you are not able to work with it. Done? Config.get. Okay. You do one thing. You put SOPs also here. SOP what? SOP of str driver. You print it like this. So when you print it, put maximum SOPs, you learn more. Okay, value of str driver, what it will print, you know? Null. I have not put that SOP. Print it, you will come to know. Done? But you will start getting errors like this. Because the value stored in config object is available to what? What values have been stored for customer servlet, you can access it only for customer servlet. How can you get it in login servlet? So like this you try to do R&D. Done? So just a given sample, like how you do R&D and learn things. It's all your effort. Once I say something, it is your duty to go and do R&D like this and learn it. Done. So I'll bring it back. Now, you got this till here. Now we'll move to the next subject. What is parameter? Till now you have worked with parameters. What are the parameters you have worked? Request.get parameter, config.get I need parameter. Yes, then context.get I need parameter. You work with parameters. Let's understand what are parameters now. See, parameter is a name value pair where name and value are of type string. Parameters are read only for the developers. You can only read the value stored in that name. Okay, but and that is it is only read only. That is, container sets the parameter. Who is setting those parameters? Container sets the parameters, and user can only get the parameters and use it. More than that you can't do anything. The developer cannot remove or modify the parameter. Cannot remove it or you cannot modify it. Let's see. There are 3 types of parameter: request parameter, config parameter, context parameters. Very important interview question. What are the different parameters? Very, very important interview question. Clear? 3 parameters. Which are there? Request, config, context. You already learnt it. Just I am summarizing it now. What are request parameters? Request parameters are parameters which are stored in what? Inside the HTTP request object. Done? Now once the request is received, container collects the incoming request parameters and stores it in what? Request object. So who is storing the parameters for you? Container. It retrieves the values from the HTTP request body and it will store it into the context object. Next, the scope of the request object is within one request and response scenario. That is, once the request is given by the client, it will be processed by calling the service method. As long as service is running, request object will be in scope and no chance to change incoming request parameters by the developer. But once you give back the response, it is destroyed. Done? And next, developer can access the request parameter as follows. How do you get it? You know the method now. You already been coding it. Request.get parameter. That's it. Now next comes config parameters. So what are config parameters? Parameters which are available in the ServletConfig object are called config or init parameters. Okay. The container initializes the config parameters by reading data from web.xml. One config object will be created for one servlet. Config object scope is same as servlet instance scope. That is, as long as servlet instance is running inside the container, that servlet's config will be there inside the container, and all the users which are sending a request to the particular servlet can access the parameters stored in the config object. Following is the way to specify. You will specify like this: what? Servlet name, servlet class, init param. This is the way you specify, and this is the way you access it. Yes or no? So I'm just showing you in a simple manner how you store and how you access. One value I'm showing you. If you want, you can store as many values you want. Now the next comes context parameters, which are stored in ServletContext object are called as context parameters. Context object will be created by the container at server startup. When does the context object get created? During the server startup. Read the notes properly. What happens when the server starts and all that, you'll understand. The next, only one ServletContext object will be created per application per JVM. Understood? That point I'll be clearing it, making it more clearer. Don't worry. Whenever context object is created, container reads the context parameters from web.xml and stores it in ServletContext object. ServletContext object can be accessed by all the servlets and by all the users in the application. Following is the way to specify context parameters. Done. And following is the way how do you access it. You get the reference to it and then you get the value. Simple. And more notes on context. Here it is there, you already seen it. What happens? A server lifecycle, just see this. What happens when the one second, first we'll go with what? What happens when the server starts? You can see this point here. Container creates what? After the thread pool is created, next immediately what is getting created? What happens when the server starts? The context object is getting created, right? Okay, leave this, all thread this one. Okay, only 1 point remain now, third point. That also I'll be covering very shortly. Otherwise all the 6 points are clear now. What happens when the server starts? Container initializes web.xml, it creates the context, thread pool will be created, servlet instance will be created. Correct? Fine. Then what happens when the server shut down? Destroys all the servlet instances. It destroys what? First all servlet instances, then all the config objects, then all the filter instances, then all the context object. Only one context object will be there. And then thread pool will be destroyed. Lastly, web.xml is unloaded. Keep reading this. On fine day you will understand very clearly what happens. Clear? Because you are very intelligent, no? So that's why you'll have to read that many times. Done? So it's as simple now. Yeah, that's it then for the day.